Thank you for joining us. This is part one of understanding the title and escrow process. Today I have two lovely guests with me.
Donna Presto, Landmark Title.
Rachel Spracklin, Landmark Title.
Yay! So today we're going to be focusing on selling a property and maybe some questions that a seller or homeowner might have. So the first question would be, what's the difference between title and escrow?
That's a really good question, and oftentimes they're used hand in hand, title and escrow, but there is definitely a separate function for each part of the transaction as a title company. So Landmark Title is a full functioning title company. We are title and escrow. Title being that we are going to go ahead and issue a title insurance policy to the new homeowner, free of any liens or encumbrances created by the former owner. Then we're also a full functioning escrow company, which otherwise people may know us as settlement services, where we act as a third party, impartial third party to the transaction, where we're holding everything within our account before we transfer funds over to the seller and transfer ownership over to the buyer.
If a seller is preparing their home for sale, what steps can they take, and along with a realtor, what steps can they take prior to going on the market?
Well, as a real estate agent, I would see if you can pre-open the escrow. Therefore, we can look at the property and see if there's any liens or judgments or how many deeds of trust are in the piece of property, maybe from a previous owner, and we could rectify those before we even go into escrow.
Can you simplify what a lien means? What is that? When a seller sees that there's a lien attached to their property, what are some examples?
A lien in our world means either deed of trust. There could be some judgments that we would have to take care of, and that is maybe child support, IRS lien, which they take some time to rectify before we close.
Should we be scared if we see anything on there, or is there a concern if we see any liens attached to a property?
Well, we should always be concerned if there's a judgment or a lien, but they're easy to be rectified by us contacting the entity that put on the lien and ask them either for a demand or a release.
So it makes it really nice if you're prepared ahead of time. That way when you go into contract with a buyer purchasing your home, you're not running into all these issues or surprises afterwards, right?
100% correct. Yes.
Perfect. Now, let's say, for example, there is a homeowner, let's say a gentleman has his name on the property, but he is married, but his wife is not on title. What kind of problems could we run into if he's trying to sell the property and doesn't disclose that he's married?
That's a really good question. And it's all open to interpretation. First off, each title company is going to stand on its own decision. So when we're talking today about offering these suggestions and options, do check with your title company on whichever title company is going to be handling the transaction, because Nevada is a community property state, and in some instances, if the seller acquired the property prior to his marriage, there can be some situations that we wouldn't need to address the spouse's interest. And I strongly suggest that you contact your local title company at that time to look at those options. Another one can be is if they acquired the property and the spouse didn't properly divest her interest, meaning that she didn't let go of her interest when the acquisition took place, and the client is holding title as just a married person, and we have a spouse that may not be as amicable or as cooperating. Again, each title company has their own options and cures for that. We have lately, especially with the dissolutions of marriages on the rise in our area, having to actually go to the courts and asking the courts for approval and the courts sign on behalf of that spouse that isn't willing to divest her interest or his interest in the property. So just because you run into that situation doesn't mean that nothing can happen and escrow cannot close. There's always options, and that's why Rachel had made a point that it's always a great idea to get the escrow pre-open so we could look at title and see whatever issues that we can resolve, because there's nothing to be afraid of. The only thing is that you have to allow for time.
Perfect. Well, let's say, for example, we're going to fast forward. We put the home on the market, we've done our pre-open, we've addressed any liens or anything that is on title, and we go into escrow, we get a contract from a buyer. What steps would a seller expect, or what kind of phone calls would they expect from you at that point?
Well, typically, Donna and I call your seller and introduce ourselves and let them know that we're going to be the escrow officer that's going to be handling the transaction. We will ask about payoff information. We will ask about HOA. That's
Homeowners Association. Yes,
Right,
that's a really good point. We need to do a whole topic on that alone.
And then we tell them that we'll touch them during the escrow. There's a few touch points that we have during the escrow, so they are informed as well as you.
And I actually like to let our sellers know ahead of time. Please take their phone calls, respond to their emails. It's super important to make sure that the process goes smoothly. We get everything addressed. The first couple weeks will be the most active with gathering information. But I think it's really great information.
Yeah.
Is there anything else, any other tips that you would want to give some sellers about selling their property and referring back to title and escrow?
I guess the main thing is keeping the communication open with your escrow officer. If you're going on vacation, if you're leaving the country, if you don't have identification, or if your identification is expiring. And also too, Rachel just briefly touched on it, is the NRS code for the Homeowners Association for the resale disclosure packages. Most of the management companies, I would say about 99.9% of them do require a fee to be paid up front. We notice that quite a few times when we're contacting the seller that they're not aware of those fees. And unfortunately, it's not something that title and escrow dictates or the real estate professional dictates. It's actually your homeowners association that dictated that and established the fee for that. So I think that's the biggest thing, is just that building that communication. We build our foundation of customer service on the emotional connection. We are very proactive escrow officers, and we do oftentimes work early, stay late on the weekends, and we call from our personal phones. So if you don't answer the phone, we'll always leave a message, a text, so that you know that it's us. And that's kind of what we like to do, is build a connection with our customers.
Well, thank you so much. That was a lot of great information. Stay tuned for more information regarding title and escrow.
Bye-bye.